Hey, hi everybody. Thanks for watching today. I've got another video here talking about the kind of connection between product marketing and product management. And really the title for this is Message Early, Message Often. And getting that messaging nailed down can be a real challenge. But I want to touch on a couple exercises to help you think through messaging and to recommend a couple ways of actually making it so that messaging happens early on. And you'll see what I mean as we go through it. So first, you can see the idea of our general release process has a bunch of different touch points. We know the product management team really looks at things like market needs, come up with the requirements and design documents and things like that, along with the help of the engineering team. Ultimately, you might have a kickoff where you then hand it over to engineering to take on the development, and there'll be regular check-ins going on, and then the product team will have kind of its kind of last final push when the actual product is launched externally to the customer. But if we overlap the timing of engineering's involvement, you see that they come in at kind of at this design phase and work through the development, testing, release cycles, kind of the internal release. And then that's also handed off back to the product team, who then kind of shuttles it over to the marketing and sales side, which takes care of the overall messaging for the launch, completes the training or makes sure training happens, etc., and does the actual launch itself. And then in that training, I'm thinking of like sales teams, or you're developing websites, you're developing collateral, and I'll touch on a couple of those a little later as well. But I want to give you this idea of the typical release process kind of looks like this. You've got this kind of the product team's involved for a long period of time, engineering's kind of involved in the middle, and then the delivery to the external user and customer kind of happens a little bit near the end. I would like to kind of turn that around a little bit in one angle, but I wanted to lay that out in general for you as we go forward. Now, when we're talking about messaging in general, there are a lot of ways to sit down and think through what the messaging should be. And when I'm saying messaging, I'm thinking it's your product. If you're the product manager, it's your product, and your plan should include what is the main value proposition, what's the point of doing this release, who cares about this, etc. But I want you, as you're kind of walking through this presentation with me, I'd like you to just step back and think about your current product or your next product idea that you're working on, and think about it first like you're talking with a family member or a friend that's asking you, hey, what are you working on? And you're telling them, well, here's what I'm working on, and here's why it's important. Here's why you won't see me for Thanksgiving, because I'm working so hard at this new product. And really, that level of discussion that you have, say, with a family member that doesn't understand the technology, how will you describe the value? And quite often, you'll find you end up talking more about the business value than you would think, because everybody can kind of understand business, but not everybody understands the nuances of the technology you're developing. It's a lot easier to say my product will help this clothing store keep track of its inventory better. Everybody gets that, but it's a lot harder to say I'm developing a NoSQL database that has high throughput transaction capabilities and can track billions of packages a day. Quite a different scenario. But I think it's really important that you actually sit down and think about this from a personal angle. Then when you're done, I'd like to just pause the video here and think about it, write it down. I'd really love to see the different scenarios you come up with. But the second kind of paradigm you should think of it through is like an organizational one. Now, this is one that we're more familiar with as product managers, because it should be part of kind of our business plan, our go-to-market strategy, etc. Should be already talking with peers in your company about what's going to be in this release. What are the key drivers for making this release happen? How will it help them in their department, in their work? How will it help them succeed? How will it help them deliver what they need to deliver? So that's kind of the organizational messaging. So you might go from talking about this high level general ideas that your friends have been told about, to driving down and saying, oh, now we're really focusing on the meat and potatoes of the technology and how it works, and what outcomes the users of the system will experience by using it. That's number 2. The third one is really that external message. What problems does it solve for? What customers should care? Who should care about this product? And then again, what's that value proposition to that customer? So these are 3 different messages, but they're all important, and they're all important kind of at different stages in the product development. Now, typically, we would really focus on that external messaging once the product's launched. The other 2 happen early on in the process. So we kind of look at this as an idea of what would it look like if messaging was kind of articulated in this general project plan here. We'd have this idea that, oh, I'm a product manager, I'm thinking through the ideas about what I want to happen in my next release. I share that with the engineering teams. We come up with some requirements and designs and things like that. When the product is kind of starting to mature, then product team will help get that message, that external message kind of put together, and then product marketing and sales will kind of push it over the line and take it outside of the company. So that's all fine, and that's great, and the transition of those conversations is all good. What I don't like about this, though, is that the external messaging is often left to be developed later as well as being delivered later, and that doesn't help very much at all, especially the marketing and sales side. So what I'd like to suggest is that early on in any of your processes, you always have a line item in there to talk about messaging. When you're sitting and thinking about what that product is going to do for you, for your internal organization, and then for the customer, you need to drill to that level as soon as possible in the design process. And you want to articulate that not just from within the product team to marketing, but also within the engineering team so that they understand the rationale for even doing the release. Now, of course, you would have already talked about why you should do the release and what the new features are good for, etc. But you need to come at it from the angle of the customer at some level so that they understand where the lines are, but what's most important versus what's secondary. And if we put in that kind of messaging development throughout and early on, then it gives the marketing and sales team that much longer to develop the press releases, the web pages, any handouts, other kinds of collateral that they need to create. That stuff is quite often becomes the bottleneck at the end of a release. But you know early on in the product planning stages what the whole purpose of this release is going to be. So take those points and capture them, and then shuttle them off to marketing, let them run with those, and then come back in and revise them later on as kind of you figure out where you are actually going to maybe not be able to deliver some of those. So this is one of my final slides here, and it's really just reiterating the points I was just saying. We should have a product completion checklist that then allows you to hand it over to a product launch that goes public. And you'll see I've kind of grouped them into left and right here. You have the building of recognizing what the requirements are for a release, doing the development, actually releasing it, and those teams kind of work independently of the product launch team in a way. Bridging that gap is usually product management and product marketing, and then they take it over and they do the asset development and the outreach and things like that. But what I want to remind you is that it's at this stage, number 1, where you should have that messaging defined. What are your high-level themes? What are the top features? What are the main value proposition for the customer? And then you hand that over, and immediately the product launch team can start working on things in steps 4, 5, and 6 at the same time in parallel with the rest of the program. It really helps, by the way, to have a project manager or a program manager helping run both sides of this. We often have it on the engineering side, but we don't often have it on the product marketing and kind of go-to-market side. And I highly recommend that. Now, I have just one request of you for watching this video, and one is to help participate in my, I think, 4-question survey about product launches. There's 4 questions. Here they are in preview. I'll give you the link in a second. But does your organization have a clearly structured launch process? Many I talk to do not. Does your team or you have a clearly defined role in that process? Yes or no? And then how successful do you feel your product launches are? I really would love this information, and it will help me going forward to produce content that actually addresses the real issues that people are experiencing in the field. So here's all the links about things I've mentioned, how to connect to me. There's my company page, my personal page on LinkedIn. If you would like to have a 30-minute complimentary call with me, just go to my Calendly link there and pick a time slot. Love to talk to you about your problems, things. If you need more help beyond that 30-minute call, we can talk about that as well. My survey link is there, survey.onemitchell.co, and I've got videos on YouTube that obviously you have found at some point, so check them out. I've got this one as well as others, such as who's your internal customer. I would like to, help reassure you that there are lots of different ways to communicate within an organization, and one of the key ways of doing it is through this messaging concept, and we'll dive more into that in future videos. Thank you for watching. See you next time.